am a disruptor. Very rigid systems that I've done where I've absolutely hated it. I've cried, like, why am I doing this? And at those points, I've had to really check myself and be like, okay.
Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Natalie Ojevah, MBE, a vice president at Barclays.
So entrepreneurship is essentially, in the simplest form, is someone that acts like an entrepreneur within an established company. So I think that's why I'm so big of calling it out, because once you can call it out, you can recognize it. People buy into people, and they buy into the genuinity of the reason why you're doing it, and seeing a person behind this. Just filter out the noise, double down on your why, and let your work speak louder than outside opinions.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Natalie Ojevah, MBE, a vice president at Barclays. From joining the bank as an apprentice at just 17 to launching a pioneering program supporting Black-led businesses, Natalie's career embodies tenacity, innovation, and inclusive leadership. So if you're interested in hearing about entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship, demystifying the 9-to-5 and societal pressures, and building and leaving your stamp in corporate, then this episode is for you. Hi, Natalie. Thank you for joining me today.
I love that. I don't even need to do my own intro. You just literally teed it off for me. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course. Honestly, I'm so excited about this chat. I think, do you know what I think this intrapreneurship that we're going to cover is such an interesting topic and something that I think more and more people just need to be more aware about and understand how it, impacts them in their day to day. But I have given an introduction to you there, but would you mind just telling everyone a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. So you've given a perfect spill there, but the only thing that I would probably add, which most people can tell from my accent, is I like to call myself the mouthy girl from Southeast London. Honestly, it just rings through and through. So things that you haven't mentioned, I'm a mum of 2 boys. So I've got 2 boys under 5, which is why these bags are so present. And yeah, I've been at Barclays I actually did a post about this today. Barclays is my longest relationship that I've ever had. So I've been in Barclays for 13 years. Started at 17. Honestly, first work opportunity, didn't have a clue about what a 9-to-5 looked like. If I'm truthfully honest, I didn't actually think that I would fit in well in banking. I was just a yes person. So I had an opportunity for a charity called XLP to bring in a bunch of young people to an assessment day. And I was like, oh, well, I'll go. 13 years down the line, I'm still there. So yeah, started off as an apprentice, did 12 months in that. And then I thought, you know what, I can do this education malarkey. So I then decided to go on to the Barclays degree program as one of the first apprentices to do that, where they paid for my business management and leadership degree at Anglia Ruskin. And that got me into business banking. And I've said that's always kind of been my home, right? So started off as a startup manager, but the biggest thing for me, and you've kind of spoken about it there, is like, I'm so big on community. I never thought I would be present in Barclays and been able to have such a career. So I'm really conscious that there's other people that are like me that will also kind of feel the same. So it started off literally as apprenticeship events, then it went into business events. So how can we make level playing field for Black businesses, female businesses? I'll be honest, I got to a place where I didn't see as much diverse businesses as I went higher up the portfolio management. So when they were turning over big amounts of money, I started seeing less diverse communities, and I started to question that. So that's where we kind of launched the Black Founders Accelerator, which is my first baby and my 2 other babies. But it's essentially a program there dedicated to support Black entrepreneurs by providing them access to resources, networks, and also opportunities to amplify their businesses. So really exciting program. I've had a fantastic 13 years. But yeah, that's just a bit about me. I am a disruptor.
I love that.
Very rigid system, but yeah, I love what I do.
No, and do you know what? As you're talking, I can hear the passion in it. And I always say you're so lucky if you find,
100%.
everyone has to work, don't they? But if you find something that you really love or you really feel you're making an impact, it's just a bonus. Isn't
Honestly,
it?
it's the biggest thing. We spend so much time at work, and I think I had to learn that the hard way, right? So there's
Mm,
jobs that I've done where I've absolutely hated it. I've cried,
mm,
like, why am I doing this? And at those points, I've had to really check myself and be like, okay, what makes me feel good? What
mm.
is going to wake me up in the morning and make me feel like, yeah, I can go to work and do this and not have that anxiety. And I think once you start switching that mind frame to how can I feed my passion and my purpose, that makes work much better. Like, no one likes to go to work. Everyone wants to be at beach, right? But it makes work a lot more easier to manage.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, one of the key topics that we are going to talk about today is intrapreneurship, not entrepreneurship, people,
No.
intrapreneurship, right? And
Yes.
so, for those that may not have heard of it, what is intrapreneurship?
So entrepreneurship is essentially, in the simplest form, is someone that acts like an entrepreneur within an established company, right? So instead of setting up their own business, they've used the resources, the platforms, and their employer bracket to drive new ideas, right? So I say these are the people that actually, do you know what? I like to use a particular way to describe it. So think of it like this. So entrepreneurs build new houses. Entrepreneurs essentially renovate the ones that are already living in, right? So they'll build the extension, they'll modernize the kitchen, they'll already start developing new things, right? But they've already got that foundation there. So that's the way I like to kind of describe the differences.
Mm,
I know we're going to talk so much more about it, but I think we have to start calling it out. And I only found out about the term when I was actually doing stuff. So I was already building programs and doing new events and saying to my line manager, what can we do differently? But I didn't know that was entrepreneurship, right? So I think that's why I'm so big of calling it out, because once you can call it out, you can recognize it. And actually, you can frame it as a framework to allow other colleagues to develop themselves in it. So, yeah, that's what I would say is the difference from entrepreneurship to entrepreneurship.
yeah. But just one thing you mentioned there, I think that is key is it is about calling it out because some
100%.
people probably are already acting as intrapreneurs. You just don't know it. You know, you
Hmm.
just labeled it. So, yeah.
And another thing as well, a lot of the things, so I'm writing a book, and all of this features in my book. But one of the things that I actually talk about in the book is a lot of the things that we see today was actually created by entrepreneurs, right? I think we just live in a different society today where we've got social media, people can have presence. But for example, if we look at PlayStation, that was created by an entrepreneur at Sony, and Sony didn't actually want the colleague to originally start that up, but he got backing from his senior leaders. He kept on pushing through with it. And as we know, PlayStation is now the biggest thing that sits under Sony. So there's so many different examples of that where something that's massive in a company we don't realize, but it was one colleague that was pushing it through. I think the difference that we need to see today is we need to start seeing the stories behind it, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I've been so big on talking about my background, talking about the reason why I've set up the Black Founders Accelerator and so much more, because people buy into people, and they buy into the genuinity of the reason why you're doing it and seeing a person behind this blue image. So I think, entrepreneurship has been around for years and years and years. I think it's just now we're starting to see more people standing behind these projects.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. I didn't know that about PlayStation.
Oh, listen, I got some good gems.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And you know what? Right. So, and this leads on to my next question, because just talking about that example you've given, right?
Mhm.
Many people think, creativity and innovation only live in entrepreneurship, right? What
Yeah.
does, entrepreneurship mean to you in terms of why it's so important and why organizations should, find it as
Mm.
innovation and what have you as important?
I love that question. For me, it's like when I look at my journey, I've always been creative, right? So I think when people think about the 9 to 5, they think you can't be creative, you have to be
Yeah.
rigid, it's got to be very structured, right? And I also had that same mindset when I first stepped into the business. So for me, entrepreneurship allows me to unlock some of that creativity that some corporates might not necessarily have the right functionality to deliver, right? But
Yeah.
also, I think the thing that you hear people in the business constantly saying is, this is the way that we've done it, right? This is the way that we've done it. We don't want to do it another way. But entrepreneurs ask that vital question of, what if there was a better way? Have you thought of X? Have you thought of Y? And you said, why does it matter for corporates? Why should corporates invest into it? And really, it's a way for companies to stay relevant. Like, a lot of the time, it's the people in the business that are feeling it, right? So if I look at my own journey, I'm a Black female. You can see that, I can't hide that. But I'm very proud of that. But one of the things for me is I live a Black female experience. So, I've always felt in the early days, not so much these days as much, but in the early days of my career, I was definitely the only Black female in many, many rooms. And actually, that then led me to being able to say, well, I can give you a Black female perspective. And actually, here is something that you haven't thought of. And that's now led on to the Black Founders Accelerator and us filling a gap. So I think for businesses, entrepreneurship allows the business to be relevant. Also, there is some research that's shown, the research was done in 2024. I can't remember who did the research, but companies that kind of foster entrepreneurship see an uplift in their revenue and efficiency by 5 to 10%.
Mm.
So again, there is a business clause there, right? It's the individual feeling like there's a purpose and actually that their ideas will shape the company and giving them some set of ownership. So I think it's really important. And I think there's a big opportunity for corporates there to invest into colleagues feeling like they can be entrepreneurial in an organization.
Yeah, and I think it's a key thing you touch on there, right? There's an ROI for the company themselves,
100%.
and then you're investing in the people or believing in the
100%.
people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you did mention, right, about organizations and they say, this is how we've always done it, this is
Mhm.
just the way that we do it. But how can people challenge the status quo? And is there a time where that's worked for you or it's allowed you to create something new in your role?
Oh, I love that question. I think it's interesting because I think when people think about challenging the status quo, they think about, oh, being disruptive and saying, this is not great, this is not great. But actually, I think it's really about like spotting the frictions and asking, how can you make it smoother? So, like when I look back at my journey, there's probably 4 steps that I think helped me kind of tailor that approach, right? And the first one would be definitely notice the pain points. So pay attention to where people are moaning or complaining, or where, that team meeting where you're constantly talking about the same thing. That is like your first indicator of, okay, this is a problem. How can I
Mm.
solve it? Right. And the second one I would probably say is asking what if. So a lot of times, and I think as well in our culture, I talk about this a lot, like we have a tendency to keep things quiet and not talk about things out loud to anyone else till it's set in stone, right?
I feel
But
like you're
actually,
told to, by the way.
pardon?
I feel like you're told to. That's
Oh, listen, I was told to.
yeah.
So it's definitely a cultural thing. And I think that's something that I had to unpick when I came into the corporate, because if I'm not able to brainstorm with people that are doing this, that are experts at this, how am I meant to make my idea grow and flourish, right? So I would honestly, the first thing is break out of that cycle. I would say create your advisory board, your PLC, right? People trusted that you can go to and ask for advice and brainstorm those options. The next is prototype. So start small. A lot of people always think I started with setting up an accelerator program. That was not the start of the journey. The start of the journey was Black History Month events, small, right? So I think, and I say this with the biggest like heart, because I have loads of people that are like, I want to set up this program and we want to do this. And actually, you need to be able to show foundation to why there is an ROI, like we said before, why there is an ROI for this case. So for me, like I said, for the Black Founders Accelerator, I started off with Black History Month events because it was a safe space to do that because it's Black History Month. So as a company, we should be doing stuff in that space. But actually that provided me the data to be like, this is where the problem statements are for the Black community, and this is how we could show up. So I always say start small, because then that's the cheapest way you can do it. If you fail, you're not failing in front of a massive audience, and you can learn really safely and quickly as possible. And the fourth one, which I think is probably encompasses all of it, is translate everything you're doing into impact, right? So show how it saves time, how it reduces cost, how it grows revenue, because again, you need to come back to what is going to be best for the business, right? We work in an organization that still needs to make money, so there still needs to be tangible alignment to that. But yeah, for me, it was setting that stone. So like I said, I noticed what the pain points were. Black community didn't feel supported by us as a banking provider. I brainstormed what we could potentially do, that prototype, by doing Black History Month events. And then I translated that to a lovely 25-page doc, which literally detailed what we delivered, how it impacted the community. Did we have any referrals off of the back of that? What I identifies our opportunities to move forward. So I always say start small, stay curious, but always, always, always provide that value early.
Yeah, yeah. I think one common trend here is you need to show back to the business, like, how are you providing, like, that
Yeah,
value? Yeah, that value piece.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. And so how can people build credibility with leadership when pitching new ideas inside a corporate environment?
Oh, this is a good question. So for me personally, it was understanding what were my leaders' pain points.
Mm,
So I always find whenever you go into something, right, and you have
yeah.
your brain idea, you are sitting at it from a perspective as a colleague, right? You're not the line manager that's sitting in the leadership meeting that has all of the KPIs and all of what's the targets for this quarter, right? So I always kind of come back to my leaders and say, what are the pain points for you? How can I resolve that? And actually altering my pitch to saying how that solves that leader's pain points, whether it's we want to be able to save 20% time on efficiency. Actually, there's a really good example that I could give you. So in my early career, I was working in business banking. And at the time, I was a startup manager. So if you had set up a new business account, you'd come in and see me, and I would essentially set up your business banking and go through the options of other credit if it was available and necessary for your business. Now, one of the things that was a massive problem at that time was we just wasn't being proactive. We was very reactive, right? So we didn't actually get to go and gain new clients, to do new acquisition. It was pretty much reactive what came in. And the team just wasn't efficient in terms of like their calls. There wasn't a clear structure on how you should
Mm,
talk to clients and how you can go through all the products. So I literally sat with my manager and I was like, right, I'm new. I want to do something fun. I can do the opening up accounts. That's great. But how can I help one problem that you have? And he was like, right. One of the issues that we have is our proactivity in contact calls. Think of something that you can do in that space that you can teach the colleagues. So I literally, on my iPhone, recorded myself doing a contact good call and a proactive contact bad call, right? Literally simple. I will be honest, if that ever got shown today, I would literally cringe. But it done the job, right? And actually that ended up getting rolled to the whole of our region, and it ended up like cutting down the time that we was having in terms of spending too long on calls, actually being able to efficiently align our diary to have more calls with clients.
mm.
And that was literally simply just me asking my line manager, what's a pain point for you and how can I help? So I think honestly, it's finding out what is the pain points and altering your pitch to that.
Yeah, you have to be curious, isn't it?
100%. You have to ask the questions.
Mm,
Like I was always that person that would ask too many questions anyway. Like my teacher would be like, "Oh, she talks too much." Da, 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 da. But like it's that intuitive, innit? Like you just
yeah.
want to know more. So always keep that.
Mm,
Um, yeah, that's
mm,
definitely what I would say.
I love that. And so if we look at entrepreneurship, right, versus
Mhm.
entrepreneurship? Today you go online, everyone seems to want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Why do you think entrepreneurship is often over glamorized?
Oh, it's the Instagram effect, isn't it? Like, it's honestly, it's the we see all the stories about the unicorn founders or the $1 million exits or this investment round. But I'll be honest, that's not the reality. And I think it's interesting because I work for a corporate, but I also, my day job is supporting startups, right? So actually, I see how tough it is for a founder to set up a business and to continue running a business. And, I think it's 65% of startups fail within the first 10 years.
Mm.
Like, it's late nights, it's loneliness, it's financial stress, and those don't make the headlines. What
Mm.
makes the headlines is the deals, this is what I do at 5 a.m. and this is how I proactively do my day. But that's not the reality of it. I also think as well, like I said a bit earlier, like you don't see the people behind the corporates that are building things. And I think that's starting to change. I'll be honest, I feel like over the last couple of years, people are starting to build their profiles and actually really talk about what they're doing in corporates. You didn't used to see that before. So I definitely think is the social media element. Whenever I go on social media, it's always telling me about how I need to quit my job to live a fulfilling life and be stressed all the time, working 24 hours a 7. But
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to do that.
And that's the key, right? Not everybody wants to do that,
Exactly.
but it's
This
what
is
you're
it.
seeing. Yeah,
And
yeah.
when the time is right, the time is right. But I do think I think the biggest problem I have with it is people seem to shame the 9 to 5. Whereas actually, a lot of these founders, a lot of people that have gone out to set up their business is because they've recognized something or they've learned something in their 9 to 5 that has then allowed them to kind of think, okay, I can do this externally. I think it's just one of those ones where we just need to embrace whatever journey people go down, whether it's, you want to go down and be a founder or you want to stay in the 9 to 5. But we definitely shouldn't put down these 9 to 5ers that are shifting real big systems, because these are the systems that are going to finance founders from our community. So we still need the people in the business to make sure it's equitable. So yeah, I think it's the over glamorization of social media, but hopefully we can start to change the narrative with this conversation.
Exactly. I think the conversations, I think it's what you mentioned about people behind, people doing
Yeah,
the work behind it are now coming more to the forefront and sharing, this is what I do, and sharing the
exactly.
impact that I make. So I think there is starting to be a shift there. And so for those who don't want to start a business, because as we've said,
Yes.
not everybody wants to do that. How can they start? How can they still build fulfilling, impactful careers inside organizations?
Love this question. So look, I think the first thing, like you said, is you can have a filling career working in a 9 to 5. I think it's just changing the mindset and realizing like you don't have to do it alone, right? So when I've only got the job title in the last 3-4 years. Before that, I wasn't the Eagle Labs D&I lead, right? So I was doing project side of desk. I was before I started the Black Founders Accelerator, I was part of the Black Professional Leadership team, again, because I just wanted to get that feel good. Before doing that, I was doing events. So I think there's ways that you can do it, whether that's volunteering for innovation projects and saying, you're doing something really cool, I would love to get involved. Or if you're feeling really confident that you actually got a really good idea and you actually think you can run it, just pitch the new initiative. It doesn't have to be to the whole team. It can literally just be to your leader and say, actually, this is an idea I have. How can we trial it out? How can we test and learn it? Um, and I think the best thing about people that work in 9 to 5 is we've got the company resources, right? So we're not doing this with our own time. Like, yeah, it is our time because we're working, but we're not doing it with our own money. So you can use the company's resources to experiment with better ways of working and have less risk on yourself than if you was a founder. So I honestly do think it's a big mindset thing. And it's shifting that mindset to actually, whilst I might not have the role, I don't need the title, I don't need the paycheck, I can actually just start doing it today. And
Mm.
how it looks today won't be the same as how it looks in 5, 10 years. But
Yeah.
it's about taking that first step. I say it's like the gym. Like when you go to gym on day one, the way you'll go gym on day 100, it won't look the
So
same. And that's exactly the same as your career.
yeah, absolutely. And so you have worked with so many startups, right? So
I
what
have.
are some of the myths about entrepreneurship that you think need to be debunked?
Oh, good question. Okay, so 3 myths, that I think need serious debunking. So you don't need to quit your job to innovate. False. You can innovate where you are, right? I was innovating as a cashier. I was innovating as a personal banker. I didn't need to have the eagle-eyed DNI to be able to innovate, right? You have a voice today. Use it where you are. The second one is that only young people succeed as founders. I absolutely hate that. I absolutely hate that. I think in reality, and we see it all the time, like your 50-year-old founder is 2 times 8 more times more likely to succeed than your 25-year-old, and that's from Harvard Business Review, and that's purely because of experience, right? So I see a lot of, and I maybe because I'm also getting to 30 now, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm not really part of the young teenagers anymore. But actually, the experience that I've gained from my years in service have elevated me compared to who I was as a 21-year-old. So I will say to anyone, and I probably say this as well because I'm about to come back from maternity leave and, big life changes. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you are. You have a voice, like I said earlier, and it makes such a difference from bringing a different perspective. So that's the second one. And then the third one, which we already actually touched on earlier, is entrepreneurs are freer.
Mm.
They're not. You guys are tied down. You guys have investors, you have deadlines, you have financial pressures. Like for me, I know where my salary is coming each month, which is a big anxiety thing that I don't have to worry about. I have had maternity leave where that's covered for me. I have benefits. So I think there's a lot of myths about entrepreneurship that needs to be debunked. But that would probably be the 3 that I see quite often that I'm like, no, 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 no. That's
Yeah.
not the case.
Yeah, because you know what as well, I think it's just people having more of an accurate view of what
100%.
entrepreneurship is because, I really do respect when people take the leap and take the jump, but I have actually heard entrepreneurs that have spoken about that kind of anxiety where
It's
they're not
tough.
sure, yeah, like
It is tough.
where money might be coming from or, payroll,
Mhm.
making the next payroll or what have you. So I actually really have such a respect for them, but I think what needs to be clear to everyone is like
It's the
more of the
reality of
accurate,
it.
yeah, than
Yeah,
accurate of what
it
it is
is the
like.
reality of it. And,
Yeah.
I come across so many founders, and I guess the biggest thing that I find from founders is that it's actually quite a lonely journey, especially if
Mm.
you're a solo founder, right? If you don't have a co-founder, if you're doing this by yourself, it could be a really lonely journey. And when I actually think about myself at work, when I feel quite low, I have colleagues that I can call and bounce off of, and I've got a team there, and there's that morale. When you're doing this by yourself, you are accountable for you,
Yeah.
right? So I don't like, I have so much respect for founders. That's why I'm here. That's my day job, to support founders. But I've seen the reality of it. And to be honest, with me and my 2 kids, I don't want it right now.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
later, but
Yeah.
right now I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when we talk about, as we've spoken about, I think there needs to be that respect on both. There's entrepreneurs, but there's nine
Mhm.
to five, and there's also myths about, being in a 9 to 5, right? There's
Yes.
often pressure to escape the nine to
Yeah.
five. What do you think people misunderstand about corporate careers?
Oh, I think the biggest misunderstanding, and it's probably a misunderstanding that I had, is that when you enter a corporate career, that is what you're going to be stuck doing. Um, I think it's funny because until you work into a corporate, you don't actually realize how many different roles, how many different teams, how many different things there are to do. There was a point, I don't count it anymore because I'm not getting the promotions as often, but there was a point when I was in Barclays where I could say that I'd been in Barclays for 8 years and I'd done 8 different roles. which is crazy when you think about it, because when you think that you've done 8 years in Barclays, you're probably thinking, oh, she was a cashier for 8 years, or oh, she was a personal banker for 8 years. So I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, is that there's no fluidity in being able to move about and develop yourself and learn. There is. It's
Yeah.
just about the connections that you make. And people always say your net worth is your net worth, right? So that is exactly the same in a corporate. Probably the others that I think is probably big misconceptions is that it's all like it's all no creativity, and it's all politics. Yes, there is elements of that. There is elements of politics. There is elements of, having this is it fixed. But that's like everything in life. And I think I've kind of come to realize that even in motherhood, like, whoa, I thought it was this perspective, and it's actually not. It's something completely else, and this is how we have to run it. And actually, that's just life. I've come to realize. I think, it's probably exactly the same for those that work for themselves, right? There is times where you can be really creative, and there's times where you actually have to stick to the format that you have, because that's the right thing to do. So yeah, I think, there is opportunity for bigger reach and more resources in the 9 to 5 that you don't get working for yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I clearly 13 years in, still enjoy the 9 to 5 and what it gives me. So
Yeah, yeah. That's a big thing though you mentioned there about, like, when you're doing it on your own, it's literally all your resource,
yeah,
right? You are risking it all to
everything.
potentially to a degree. So actually it's quite lucky when maybe you can operate in an environment where you wanna do a new idea, you wanna start something new, but actually you've got the
Exactly.
backing of the company that you work for.
And a lot of the times you'll find that founders would have set something out in a corporate and then left the corporate to go and do it outside,
Mm.
because they had that infrastructure there where they could test and learn, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and take that framework for themselves, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities to develop yourself and actually use that umbrella, as you've got this big company under you, to develop yourself. And that's essentially what I've been doing. And I know loads of colleagues that do that to then go and do something elsewhere. So I think it's, again, like you said, right, is respecting both of the journeys and actually how they can interplay on each other.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so how can we actually change the narrative, so that 9 to 5 isn't seen as a compromise, but as a platform for impact?
Oh, I love that question. First thing, most importantly, is by telling the stories differently. I
Mm,
think we really need to showcase the entrepreneurs who have actually launched major initiatives inside companies, because you got to see it to believe it, right? And I think it's the exact same as my career. When I started, I didn't necessarily see people that looked like me. So I was like, can I be that leadership role? It's exactly the same for other colleagues that want to build stuff. And, you know, one of the things that I've really tried to be transparent on to my colleagues is how I've done it, so that they can do it too. I hope she doesn't mind me shouting her out. There's a colleague called Poonam, who I was working really closely with, who was there around the time when I was setting up Black Founders Accelerator. And she came to me, she was like, I really want to do this for the Asian community. So right, this is what I've learned, this is how I've done it. Take this playbook and let's build on that. And she's just launched her initiative at the House of Lords this week. So again, for me, it's really about being able to be visible and show people that you can do it, and not being gatekeeping, and actually being like, this is how I learned, this is the mistakes that I learned from, and giving them that so that they can build it themselves. Because honestly, you do have to see it to believe it.
yeah, literally, it's so important. Don't gatekeep, guys.
Oh, please stop the gatekeeping. In
Yeah,
2025, we can't be gatekeeping anymore.
yeah, we
We
literally
can't.
cannot. We cannot. So, what advice would you give to someone who feels judged for wanting to stay and grow within a corporate environment?
Oh, good question. Um, Probably the loudest voice doesn't have to be the deepest wisdom. This is what someone said to me before. People will project their own insecurities on you. You don't need to defend your own path. Your results will do that. And I say that because there was points where I would get the look or, the rolls of eyes of, oh, she's talking about Black founders again. Like, really? We're talking about this again? But actually, that wasn't a reflection on me. That's a reflection on them and their
Yeah.
uncomfortability with that. So once you start saying, actually, I live in my truth, I know what I'm doing is trying to leave an impact and, I want to make things better. All the other noise, you can block it out, you know? Don't let their insecurities be projected on you. You keep focused on driven on what the purpose of the goal is.
Yeah, yeah. And so is that kind of advice that you've embodied yourself? Like, how have you personally dealt with like external pressures about
Mm.
your career choices?
Good question. Um, I've had to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm.
And that's something that is, I'll be honest, even today, like it's something that I have to battle through. Um, but like for example, I chose to stay at Barclays while launching the program for Black founders because, some people might have seen it playing safe, but I knew that the bank needed to back these entrepreneurs and it was bigger than me. I think a lot of the time it's just realizing what your purpose is, right? And actually just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because someone once said to me, there's no growth in comfortability. You don't grow in comfortability. So that's definitely one thing that I've had to say. One advice that I would give anyone else, and I said it earlier, is just filter out the noise, double down on your why, and let your work speak louder than outside opinions.
I love that. I love that. Do you know when you touched on being comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Mhm.
I love that because I remember, like when you do your yearly annual sets
Yeah.
of reviews at work,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember a manager gave me a piece of feedback and he's like, oh, you always operate at the edge of your comfort zone. And I thought, oh yeah, I kind of
Interesting.
do. And it made me take that leap now in terms of doing things consciously. Maybe I was
Yeah,
doing it subconsciously before, but consciously now being comfortable with being
yeah,
uncomfortable, but actively operating at the edge of my comfort zone and pushing myself. So I think the quicker people can pick that up, in their
100%.
career, the better. And so let's talk about building, right, and
Mhm.
leaving your stamp in corporate. So,
Mhm.
how can someone identify opportunities to put their unique stamp on their company or role? I think you've touched on it quite a bit actually in terms
Yeah.
of like um finding things where maybe there have
Yeah.
been challenges or,
Mhm.
the thing that they keep moaning about, or like
Yeah.
even the example you gave about, which I love, you did a video of how to do a call and how not to.
Yeah, yeah.
I really love that. But is there, I guess, structure or framework, how anything
Um,
else people should look out for to identify opportunities?
oh, that's a good one. So, yeah, I spoke on it earlier around like look at where the frustration lives, where
Yeah.
people are moaning and stuff like that, and think about a way that you can like solve that problem. Um, I think, look, if you're naturally creative, like you can think about how you can redesign the communication of things. If you're analytical, you can think about, far end how to build a dashboard, like, and it doesn't have to be a fancy dashboard as well. I've seen dashboards done on Excel and I've been like, brother, I don't know how you done that, but that's sick. Um, but yeah, your stamp is really found in where your talent lies. So I think look at where you're good at, right? I was always good at solving problems. I was always good at building relationships. But if you ask me a maths question, that is not my remit. So I think it's just understanding where you're good at and then putting that into exactly where you want to develop.
What about the balance of being
Mhm.
yourself? What strategies have helped you balance being yourself, right, while also aligning with company goals?
So I get this asked a lot and I look
Yeah.
down at my phone because I'm like, oh, this is a good question. Um, Again, I have had to be it takes a long time, but I've had to be really true to myself in terms of I noticed and it's funny because I think sometimes when we come from our culture, we don't realize that we code switch sometimes. And I didn't necessarily until I started noticing when I would go into certain rooms, instead of talking like this, I would suddenly speak a bit more like this. And I would, and that's not naturally who I am. So I think there's been points where I've had to check myself and be like, right, who am I? And what do I want to bring to work? And I think, that's a exercise that I've had to do at work on social media, just around who am I comfortable sharing? Because I am a whole plethora of people, but I don't want the whole world to know exactly who I am. I want to keep that to people that I'm close to, right? Um, but honestly, I would say, and this is probably not a popular opinion because I know people have their own personal journeys at work, but the only thing you can be is yourself at work. Like, I will be honest, the points where I started being unapologetically me and speaking with my accent and questioning things and sharing my story and stuff was literally from me holding myself accountable to who I am. Um, so I think it's just that comfortable with learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. But where can you bring that into? And I think the biggest thing that I was able to do is storytelling. So if you go on my LinkedIn, if you go on my page, I'm very open about my journey. I'm very open about being a young carer. I'm very open about going through bereavement, because that all makes me who I am. That's part of my DNA. Um, and I'll be honest, I say this, please don't fire me. If it got to a place where I was questioned about me being who I am at work, I would probably leave. Because then you've got to question yourself of, do I really want to change who I am for the company? So I think you've got to ask yourself, does who you are align with the company, first of all? If it doesn't, then you need to ask yourself some questions around if it's the right company for you to be at. Because I don't believe in changing who you are to fit a company. If you have to change who you are in a company, then you shouldn't be at that company. That company doesn't deserve you. You should be your whole self. Um, and then, being comfortable with sharing my story and being visible and, you know, bringing that Southeast energy to the room, because everyone else is just the same. So actually, I can be a bit different. I can have color. I can have that personality, and actually, I'll be the memorable person in that room.
Yeah, it's important to be, in certain circumstances, memorable, right?
It
And
is.
yeah, and I agree with you in terms of, if you literally, I think in any facet, have to constantly be somewhere where you cannot be yourself, you are not going to be happy. You're
No.
not going to bring your best. Actually, it's probably going to impact how you perform or what you do. And there is probably somewhere
Yeah.
where one should be, where they can have
100%.
that happiness. And I feel like you'll always find that right place to be. So I think, yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. Um, and so now, looking back, what's one way you've left a legacy or long-term impact in your organization?
Oh, looking back, probably is. I don't want to sound too big-headed, but probably two things that I would say I feel like I've left a legacy for. One is how we're showing up for underrepresented founders. I think I it's a mixture of me being that mouthy girl from Southeast London, me doing the work before the time, and then right timing. I think in 2020 was a horrible year, right? We had COVID, we had George Floyd. But actually, one of the things that I always say to people is that in that time when George Floyd happened, everyone was locked down at home. No one could run away from social media. No one could run away from the news. And actually, I was fortunate in a really unfortunate time to have done the work for a number of years, to then go to my CEO at that time and be like, this is what we need to do for the Black community. This is what I've done for the last couple of years. Let me do this side of desk and run with that. And to think that that one conversation has led to Eager Labs having a whole D&I proposition where they're supporting black founders, female founders, Asian founders. Like, that is probably, for me, probably the proudest thing. Like, I don't sit on that enough. I'll be honest. That's probably one of the biggest things. I don't sit on the impact that I've made because I've left. That stuff is still running. Like, it doesn't need me to be the person that's pushing how we're supporting underrepresented founders. That's actually now in the DNA of the business. So for me, that's probably one of the most proudest things. Um, The second is my colleagues, because again, I think if something only lives with you, you're not doing it right. It needs to be able to live without you, right? Because then it's scalable, it's part of the business. And I think I have worked with amazing colleagues over my 13 years, and all of them are as passionate and as driven as me, and they're all doing incredible stuff. And I always say that you always want your mentees to be doing better than you, because then you're doing something right. And for me, I'm seeing my mentees doing things that I had wished I'd done. And that's a lasting legacy, because they're gonna open the door for someone else, and they're gonna open the door for someone else. So yeah, I think those would probably be the two main things that I feel like that's the legacy I've left.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to reflect, I think, sometimes, because you're
Yeah,
always going on to the next thing,
always going
thing.
forward, 100%.
Yeah, 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 amazing. Well, that is right, most of my questions, but I
Oh,
do something, right, Natalie, where I
okay.
like to add a quick fire round
Go on
question.
then.
So I'll ask you a few questions, right?
Hit
And
me
you just
up.
have to tell me the first thought that comes to your mind.
Oh,
Okay. So, um, tea or coffee?
oh, hot chocolate.
You're so different. Um, morning person or night owl?
Oh, morning person.
Oh, okay.
That's
Te
only changed since baby.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Got you up early. Text
Mm.
or voice note?
I'll text.
Oh, really? Oh,
Listen, I get voice notes. I don't do voice notes. I love
mm,
listening to a voice note, but you won't hear me talk for 5
mm.
minutes.
Do you know what? It's nice to hear that actually, because I'm more of a voice note person, and then I'll voice note people and they'll text back and I'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah, no, I love to listen to a voice note. I
yeah."
ain't gonna record a voice note back to you though. Like
Oh,
all of my friends, they'll voice note me. I'll text them back.
yeah, yeah. So, if you weren't in banking, what would you be doing?
Oh, I'd be an actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I
Oh.
love the stage. I complain that I hate public speaking and all these things, but I love it. I love the attention. I love a bit of drama. Um, so yeah, actor or a professional swimmer.
Oh, I
Hmm.
like that. Okay. What's one word your friends would use to describe you?
Random.
Oh, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, random.
And then, what is one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Oh, what was something people would be surprised to know about me? I'm quite an open book, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, that I don't eat fish.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't like it?
Do you know what? It's a really bad so my dad used to sell like fish when I was younger. So we always was a big fish household, and my pet fish died, and then he said we was gonna eat it. And since that day I don't eat fish.
Oh my
Yeah, he
goodness.
scarred me
So
out of that
sorry.
one still.
Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
where can people find you?
Good question. So
Yeah.
you can find me on LinkedIn. I post all the time on there. Natalie Ojevah MBE. I also have my own website. So write blogs about entrepreneurship, how you can innovate in your roles, how to use your own voice. So you can check me out at natalieojevah.co.uk. And also Instagram, Natalie Ojevah MBE. Natalie Ojevah MBE everywhere. Just Google
Amazing.
it. You'll find me.
Yeah. It's always better when it's like consistent, right? Because it's easier to find.
Yeah, because if I start doing random names, I'll even forget it. So it's just Natalie Ojevah MBE. You'll find
Amazing.
me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. Honestly, it has
Honestly,
been a pleasure.
thank you for this conversation. It's been an absolute dream. I can't believe it's been an hour already.
It's
You
gone by
are
so
an
fast.
absolute star. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
for this amazing convo.
Oh, no, thank you. And you know what? I just know so many people, right, are going to love this episode because it goes back to one thing you said, which is I don't think people know that they're
Yeah,
actually operating in
100%. Yeah,
entrepreneurship. And this is going to, I think it will bring it more to their conscious, and it's going to impact how people now show up in their work, their day to day, and how they kind of excel and stuff. So I can't wait for
exactly.
everybody to see this episode.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
giving me
so
the
much. Of
platform.
course, it has been a pleasure. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.